Good evening and good day, whatever time it is for you. I am thankful that you're here. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you. Welcome in, welcome in. If you're new to the channel, I'm so glad you're here. And if you are a vet returning, I am also glad you're here. Had a little glitch in the matrix action for you, and I just had to reboot my computer and restart the live stream because apparently I was freezing on part one. So I am going to do a little recap here for people who don't want to go back and watch part one, and also people are going to be moseying their way in here who were in the last stream. I hope that they join me, but I certainly understand if I lost their attention with having my signal dropped. It is raining cats and dogs. I don't know if that has anything to do with my signal being dropped, but I also forgot to switch my connection to the hard connection, even though I'm wired and plugged in. So I'm really hoping, hey Kimmy, nice to see you. I'm so glad you found me. Mo, I'm also glad to be back. I'm so glad you found me, Mo. Artem, hey Artem, nice to see you. Thanks for bearing with me, y'all. I think that was just a operator error. I think it was actually my fault. So it's raining cats and dogs outside, and I forgot to click my connection to my wired connection. Like I plugged in my wired connection, but I didn't actually tell my computer that I did that. So with the rain and everything, I think it just dropped the connection. So I appreciate y'all finding me over here, even though, I dropped the ball. I was in the middle, we were in the middle of a very deep conversation. And I think I had seen all the comments. Artem, I had just read your comment about your perspective of what the word respect means. And I really liked your definition of respect. So just a quick recap. I'm not going to harp too long on this, but in the event that somebody watches this video and they did not watch part one, I want them to know exactly what was talked about so they don't have to go back and watch part one. Although I do recommend it if you want a more detailed version of what just happened over there. So I am a peer support specialist and I am certified. I am required by the code of ethics to adhere to a certain level of respect, for lack of a better term, for other people, other people's beliefs regarding medication, regarding religion and spiritual beliefs, and regarding their culture. So that's something that we talked about quite a bit. So I'm not going to spend too much time here talking about what I think that is. But if you were with me over on the part one of this stream and you made a comment that I didn't get to, please feel free to type it in again. I did not overlook it on purpose. People were telling me that I was frozen. And so I realized that I had to fix that as soon as possible. I hope I don't drop signal again. I did make some changes. So hopefully we're with each other now for a little while longer. Okay, so back in the chat, Nasir, you found us. I'm so glad you found us, friend. Welcome in. I'm so glad you're here. And thanks for finding part two. So Artem says, just to repost what I said about respect right before the freeze, I think there's three components. One, presumption of goodwill. Two, presumption of merit, also known as intellectual humility. Yep. And three, compliance with expectations or boundaries. Artem, AKA Proudly Ignorant, I absolutely appreciate your comment. I agree with you. Your perspective is one that I can get behind. And I'm not saying, I want to be really clear about this. I'm not saying that if your perspective is different than mine, that you're not allowed to post on this channel. It's really important to me that everyone feels included and safe and supported here. So all this talk about ethics and the YouTube community guidelines, like the reason that I'm going through this stuff is just so that you understand where I'm coming from when I say, like, I want us all to respect each other and operate under a certain level of merit. I like that word merit. Artem, thank you for that. Uh, and this is to protect my certification. So it is a bit selfish, but it's also to protect this channel. And it has been brought to my attention that this is a safe space. People feel comfortable coming here and sharing things that they wouldn't necessarily share elsewhere. So this is not only to protect me and my certification, but also to protect this space so that we can keep coming here, hanging out, and hearing what each other have to say and supporting each other. And also for future people that haven't even found us yet, I want this to be a safe space. Yo. Okay, so Mo, what does condemning someone mean to you in regards to respect? Need further clarification. Okay, Morrison, I really appreciate this question. What condemning someone means to me would be if somebody's opinions are different than mine, but telling them that they're wrong or that there's only one way. Um, Personally, like I have my personal spiritual beliefs, but as a peer support specialist, I'm required by the ethical code of conduct to respect other people's spiritual beliefs as well. So if I was, for example, working with somebody who is Buddhist, just as an example, or if they're a Sikh or something like that, um, I would not be allowed to push my personal spiritual beliefs on them or tell them that there's only one way. That would be a violation of the ethical code of conduct, and I could lose my certification for that. So I had said it over in the other stream, and I want to ask here that everyone be mindful, and know that I am not trying to shut anybody down or say that you cannot have your own perspective. I want you to have your own perspective. I want every single person in here to feel comfortable and safe expressing their perspectives. There needs to be a level of leaving like coercion or forcefulness out of it, because it was brought to my attention. As a matter of fact, a few people came to me and said that they have felt uncomfortable before with the level of um, trying to think of how to say this in a way that makes sense and that I mean, like I'll say this. There's some people here who have very strong beliefs, and I support that. I think it's wonderful that there are people here who have strong beliefs. It's really important, though, in terms of my certification and doing the work that I'm trained to do and passionate about doing, that I protect other people and educate people, especially people who are here regularly, and especially people who are a reflection of this channel with Blue Wrenches, like especially moderators. I really need you to support the code of conduct that I'm required to adhere to, and to allow other people to have different opinions than yourself. And I understand having strong opinions about spiritual beliefs or about medication or about cultural background or um, politics, or insert controversial subject here. Like, I absolutely support everyone here's perspective. I have to ask that everybody here give everyone else the same freedom to believe as they want to believe. Oh no, audio is cutting out, but I can hear you. Oh my gosh. I just saw that comment. Can y'all hear me right now? Give me a yes in the chat if y'all can hear me. Pretty please, pretty please. Audio's fine, just a bit staticky. Okay, we're having a huge storm here today in Central Cali. A lot of the businesses were shut today. I was wondering if this was going to interfere with my already weak signal. So I appreciate you all bearing with me. I appreciate you all finding me again. I hope that, okay, Zach sounds good. Thank you. And Kimmy said audio is fine. It's a little staticky. Nasir says good sound. Artem sounds good for me too. Thank you so much, y'all, for your feedback. That's really helpful to me. I'm just going to keep rolling with this, and hopefully we stay good. I'm going to hydrate though. So cheers. Okay. Oh, let me go back and get these comments too. Oh, did I get all the comments? Okay, Artem said a couple things. Ooh, Artem, I love your comments so much. I really appreciate you typing them in. It makes me happy anytime I see one come through because I know it's going to be something profound and well thought out and well said. So Artem says, I also wanted to say, I think boundaries are a per individual thing. People should speak up about their boundaries if they want them to be respected. It's hard to assume these things. Absolutely. I agree, Artem. And that is something that I have had to learn in life. Going back to Rev's question. Oh no, did it drop again? Can y'all hear me? Oh no. Can y'all see me? I just asked this question. I don't know if this maybe it's just not meant to be. Maybe y'all can see me right now, and I'm just. So I'm gonna say what I have to say, and then if I just have this feeling that y'all can't hear me right now, but so I'll just say that going back to Rev's comment about fear of being alone. We can't hear you. Okay, so I'm just up here like totally flailing, wondering if y'all can hear me. This is the beauty of live stream, people. It's like it's not a love-hate relationship. I don't mean that because I really enjoy doing this, but sometimes it's just like, man, you don't know if a joke landed, you don't know if maybe you offended, if I don't know sometimes. Like it's hard to read comments sometimes, like you would read faces, if that makes sense. So, and what happened last time is that it dropped down, like the audience count dropped from like 10 to 3 or 2, and that's when I lost signal. So I'm just hoping that everything's okay and that I'm not offending anybody right now. But Artem, your comment makes me go back to Drew Rinker. Hey, Drew, nice to see you, man. Welcome in, welcome in. We're having a, for me, it's a growth conversation personally, because this is not something that I've ever done on my channel before. We're talking about community guidelines and boundaries. And I'm not going to recap on the first thing. I'll come back to it at the end, but there's an entire part 1 that talks about the first thing, and I briefly summed it up in the beginning. I'll come back to it full circle in the end. But I want to talk about, actually, I want to get to Artem's comment first before we move on to the next thing. So in terms of the fear of being alone, just thinking about Rev's comment, which I think we lost Rev. Hopefully Rev finds us again. Rev had asked in part one before we lost signal about um, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, fear of being alone. That's he thank you. I feel like somebody actually said that out loud and I caught it. So thank you. Um, I think this is tied to Artem's point about speaking up about boundaries because personally, before I learned to be my best friend, which if you didn't hear that conversation, please go back to part one. It was a really good conversation in response to what Rev asked about the fear of being alone. And I think that when we fear being alone, we can lack having personal boundaries, which can create a plethora of different problems in one's life. I certainly have been, I don't want to call myself a victim, but I think at that time I would have viewed myself as a victim to circumstance or other people's disrespect essentially, but it wasn't necessarily all their fault. It was partly my fault because I hadn't set a boundary. I didn't know what my boundaries were at the time. And if you don't know what your boundaries are, then it's hard to enforce them. And again, I'm going to say this just in case you didn't catch part one. Something I heard in peer support specialist training, Brene Brown say, and again, I don't follow her closely, but I it has stuck with me what she said about boundaries. In that boundaries are, simply put, what is okay and what is not okay. And that boundaries don't necessarily have to be communicated. Sometimes it's necessary. Like I said in part one, that I have had to set a hard boundary and tell someone that was talking about coming into my personal space, meaning like my place, which I'm totally cool with this person coming over to my place. But I get the feeling that sometimes this person is or has been under the influence. And that's a hard boundary that I have as someone in recovery, that like I can't have someone who's intoxicated in my personal space. It's a non-negotiable for me. So I had to communicate that. And I think in the past I wouldn't have communicated that. And they were respectful. They received it, they heard it, and then it was done. It's not something that's come up again. So it's getting easier for me to communicate those. And that's what we're talking about today. We started this conversation over in part one. So I will, like I said, circle back to a summary of what we talked about over there. But first, let's see what Artem's other comment was. Artem says, I think condemnation refers to the disrespect of that first component, the goodwill. So this is in response to what Mo was saying. I'm going to read it again. I think condemnation refers to the disrespect of that first component, the goodwill. To condemn someone is to accuse them of some kind of malice, assume that people have good intentions. Artem, I love this. Yes, 100% agree with you. I think, especially in a community like this, absolutely, you can't go wrong making the assumption that someone has good intentions. Now, if it's a troll, one might argue, if someone comes in here talking about trollish type of things, then one might argue that maybe they might not have the best of intentions. But even trolls, I could argue that it's like, well, they're getting something out of it. It's doing something for them that they would come in and troll. So I like that a lot. Assume that people have good intentions. Now, this begs the underlying philosophical question, Artem, and anybody who might want to comment on this. Should we assume that trolls have good intentions? Now, I'm joking. This is a joke, but I'm curious about your answer. Tala in the house. Hey, Tala, nice to see you, man. We are having a very pleasant conversation. I'm actually really enjoying it. I feel more comfortable talking about it than I thought I would. We're talking about community guidelines and boundaries tonight, so I'm glad that you're able to join us. I had prompted people and given people the opportunity, if you're interested, in letting us know if you've got a situation where you're not sure what your boundary is, you're trying to decide, or you're not sure how to communicate a boundary, you're figuring it out, or how you've communicated a boundary successfully in the past. I really want to hear what y'all have to say about that as we continue down this list of points that I made about community guidelines and boundaries. Artem, absolutely. I always assume that trolls have good intentions. Okay, that's what I thought, Artem. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, well, they're getting something out of it. And like, who knows? Maybe they could be friends, you know? Trolls are mostly AI. Yeah, that's what it seems like. Some of the troll comments I've seen that they don't seem quite human. But I'm lucky. I've only had trolls in here one time. There was a couple of them, and my mods were on it, zapped them like mosquitoes in a fly trap. So thank you, mods. I really appreciate every single one of you, and I just appreciate every single one of you in general. I want to reiterate that the purpose of this conversation is my best effort at creating a safe and enjoyable space for us to talk about hard stuff because it can be really difficult, especially for someone who's new, who's never been in the community before, who is attracted to it and they see what's going on here. I want them to feel comfortable and safe in here their first time. Kimmy, I think there's different tiers of trolls. Some are having innocent fun, some are more malicious. That's slightly terrifying. But you're absolutely right. And I think back to a conversation that I heard on your channel, Kimmy, about how to protect oneself against trolls, and um, I really appreciated that conversation. I think I need to do more um, now that I'm thinking of it to protect myself. Talking about boundaries, got to set the boundaries with the trolls, you know? Monsieur, thank you, brother. Always positive. Yeah, Tala is always positive, and I want to celebrate Tala because I've noticed that Tala has this keen ability to express perspective while making other people feel comfortable at the same time. And it's like an art. I really appreciate that about you, Tala. So thank you. Keep up the good work, friend. Artem, trolls do their thing just to bait you into talking to them about it. They aren't even trying to be mean. Good trolling is supposed to be clever and thought provoking. Okay, so this is good to know. I think I have been baited before. Uh, I really trusted someone and wonder if they're responsible for the troll that I got. But there's no way that I could prove that, and I don't actually know. I'm gonna have some more water. Yes, absolutely, Tala. You're certainly welcome. And thank you. Okay. So we will circle back to the first thing again. Actually, I'm going to touch on this one more time just because it feeds into this next part. And so if you missed the first part, feel free to watch part 1 if you're interested in it later. I lost signal and had to reboot my computer. There's a big storm happening right now, and so there is a part 1. So in this part 2, I'm just going to briefly summarize again for the people who are just joining that as a peer support specialist, I have a code of ethical conduct that I am required by law to adhere to. And also as a YouTube channel creator, I'm still working on what to call that. I don't exactly know what to call myself there, but as someone who has a channel, I am required by the YouTube community guidelines and policies to ensure a certain level of conduct on the channel. And so, as a recap, as a peer support specialist, I am ethically required to be inclusive of different spiritual and religious beliefs, different viewpoints on culture. Regardless of what the person's cultural background is, it's important that I respect it and support it. And I ask that we do that here in this community as well. And then also medication. It's really important that people's viewpoints on medication, whether they're pro or against, um, all of that is fine here. That's all fine. It's just that whatever a person's personal beliefs are, it's really important that I, as a peer support specialist, respect and support that. And as the person responsible for the platform, it's really important that I cultivate a community where we're doing that for each other as well. So, in terms of YouTube policies, um, yes, cheers, Nasir. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, friend. So, in terms of YouTube policies, I reviewed these briefly. I haven't gone in depth with these because I felt like I got a good enough. I reviewed the ones that were pertinent to my channel. So rather than reading all the nitty gritty, because there's a lot in terms of guidelines and policies to read, I was just like, all right, what's applicable to my channel? I'm going to focus on that for this live stream. And then I will be doing a deep dive into the full thing. Not sure that I'll talk about it because it's not the purpose of this channel. But with respect to this channel and peer support, there are different policies, such as the harmful or dangerous content policies, um, hate speech policies, which I know, Tala, your channel, I think, got dinged for hate speech, which I haven't quite figured out why exactly that was. Tala, I'd be interested to hear if you figured out why that one video that you put out got dinged for hate speech, because that would be helpful to me. I want to avoid that the best that I can. Um, and also, Tala, something that I didn't see when I was doing my review, and this goes for anybody who might know the answer. This is a legitimate question that I have for anybody who's able to answer. I'm curious about live streams and the chat. I'm curious about whether the chat could be used against the channel. You know, if someone like a troll, for example, comes in and says something that's inappropriate and the comment is missed or not deleted, could that go against the person who hosted the live stream? Um, the other YouTube policies that I thought were relevant to this whole concept of honoring other people's perspectives and not using coercion or like forceful communication to communicate our own perspectives, but to be tolerant of other perspectives while communicating our own. and keeping in mind and communicating that this is our perspective, like this is my perspective, which is a core principle of peer support. Is like harassment and cyberbullying, which that's pretty extreme. But one that I thought was really pertinent was medical misinformation. So, gosh, it's a sticky subject because we're all entitled to have opposing views. And I think it's really important. You'll hear me saying this quite a bit coming up, that it's okay for us to have opposing views, especially if things get heated, which things tend to when we talk about controversial subjects like medication or spirituality or politics or cultural beliefs. Like these topics can get heated just naturally when we have opposing views. And having opposing views is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I just ask that we be, again, to bring that word respect into play, that we be respectful and tolerant of how other people believe. In terms of medical misinformation, I think I I mean, I don't know. Let's see. Did anybody see type in the comments, the truth must be spoken, Tara? I agree with you, Nasir, that the truth must be spoken. The truth to one person is not necessarily the truth to another. And so that's why you're going to be hearing me say um, something about opposing viewpoints, because in terms of the way that YouTube states that I must operate this channel, like in order to keep the doors open, in order for me to maintain this safe space for people, I've got to recognize that there are opposing views. And so that's like something that you're going to be hearing me say if things get heated, if and when, because like things naturally get heated. In terms of peer support, like it's okay to have opposing views, and I encourage people to have opposing views. But in terms of um, um, like explicitly stating that someone is not intelligent or doesn't have a brain, and nobody has said anything like that on this channel. I'm not suggesting that, but um, to go as far as to put someone down or be disrespectful because they have opposing beliefs is not what we want to cultivate here on this channel. I think that goes without saying, but since this is a conversation about the community guidelines and boundaries, I just wanted to get that in. Nasir says genocide of Palestinian people. You know what, Nasir, I actually don't know a lot about what's going on in Palestine. I have stuck my head in the sand, self-admittedly, as a way to protect myself. Um, so I've heard like in general what's going on, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what's going on over there. But I appreciate your passion, and I want you to feel free to share what you want to share here. My hair's being wild. The rain's doing weird things to it. Is it raining where y'all are at? I'm curious about that because it has been raining cats and dogs here. And I probably should have put my hair up, but what are you going to do at this point? Yes, I agree. Nasir, peace. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I really liked about the Catholic Church, which I'm not Catholic these days, but I was raised to be Catholic for part of my life. I've been raised different types of religions and gone to lots of different types of churches, and I love that phrase, "Peace be with you," and also you. Peace be with you. I like that. One part of the Catholic perspective that I really actually like. We are on board with you, Tara. Thank you, Drew. I really appreciate that, because these are things that are not necessarily easy to talk about, and I really, it really means a lot to have your all's support. Like, it means a lot that you're all still here listening. I know we lost a couple people when the signal went down, and I really do apologize for that happening. It was my mistake. I forgot to select the correct network. So it was trying to connect to my Wi Fi, and the Wi Fi probably went out because of the weather. So that was my mistake. So if you're still here with me, thank you so much. And thank you just for listening to what I have to say about boundaries and guidelines. The fact that I have a certification to protect is what motivated me to have this conversation. So thank you for sharing the space with me. I still like, I'm surprised that nobody has talked about successful boundaries, like, or things that you might want to set a boundary on. I'm trying to think of any other examples that I have. I lived in shelters for a couple years, so there was a lot of just walking away. I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite boundary. Do y'all ever just walk away? I learned at the safe house that I live in that it's okay. Like, I did not know this before the safe house, that it is okay to say, you know what? I'm a little riled up right now, which it never comes out that way. It's usually like, you know what? I'm a little riled up right now, or you know what? I'm a little angry right now. I need to take a break, but can we come back to this conversation in 20 minutes? Or can we come back to this conversation later tomorrow? That has worked really well for me. And it's not necessarily communicating a boundary, like, it's commute, but it is at the same time. It's not necessarily saying that something they did was unacceptable. It's saying that I cannot have a conversation right now because I'm upset. I wish I would have done that with a friend that um I didn't think to do it. I didn't think to do that with a friend that I had a disagreement with um a few weeks ago, and I wish I would have thought of that. All religions are made by AI. Yeah, Nasir, you know what? I don't identify as a religious person. And I think a lot of people in here can relate to that. Feel free to drop in the chat if you identify with a religion or not. I think a lot of people in here, I can't speak for everybody, I can only speak for myself, but I would predict that a lot of people in here identify as being spiritual but not religious. And that's my perspective, but I my perspective could be clouded on what other people may or may not think, just based on the way that I view the situation. So feel free to let me know, are you religious or not? I'm actually very interested to see who says what. Drew, walking away allows me to process things better, especially when I'm frustrated. 100%. I got so good at doing this when I lived at the shelters because I got mad a lot. There was a lot to be, there was a lot to get riled up about when I lived at shelters because there's all different types of people. And quite frankly, I can get pretty wound up at times, especially in those days. I've always been pretty laid back, but when it comes to my personal space and people violating those boundaries, like this one time, oh my gosh, let me tell you, want to hear a story? I got a story for you. I could not believe this. It ended up turning out okay, but I got a story for you. Let me hydrate first. Talk about boundaries. Just thinking about it gets me riled up. So, the second shelter I lived at, uh, we were all in the same room. There were bunk beds and a bunch of women with a lot of mental illness, all different types of psychologies. Some of these women had just gotten released from prison, jail, not prison, jail, maybe prison. And there was this one woman. She was older, like by older, I would say she was probably in her late 60s, I would guess. Older than me. Not that that's old. I'm not saying that 60s is old by any means of the stretch, but older than I was at the time. So we we were getting along great. I called her by name. We'll call her Cheryl for the sake her name is not Cheryl, but we'll just call her Cheryl for the sake of this conversation. And Cheryl and I were getting along, and I noticed that Cheryl didn't really talk to the other women, and that in retrospect would have been a really good cue to let me know that this might not be somebody that I want to make friends with. But I tried. And for the first few weeks we were cool. She like gave me a pair of socks. She gave me some coloring stuff like crayons and a coloring book which I used. And things with Cheryl and I were really good, and I couldn't understand why I was the only person she was talking to. Well, she started crossing boundaries that I had. She started like bumping into me and kind of bullying me. And one day, she walked by my bed with a glass of orange juice in her hand, and she poured it all over my bed, all over my bedding. There was orange juice all over my bedding, and they required that we leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was 7:45 or something. And I was trying to go to a meeting, like it was time for me to go, and I just, I mean, I wish that I could pull the tapes from that moment and see the whole thing happen again, because what she did was she acted like she was tripping, but she wasn't tripping. Like she wasn't falling over. She acted like she fell and spilled the orange juice, but that is not what happened. She intentionally I had a second bunk. Like you don't trip and fall and accidentally have your arm go up, and like that doesn't work that way. Um, so my boundary was crossed in that situation. I think I did say something. I think I go, "Are you serious?" And but then I realized like this is not it's not worth getting in a fight over. So I walked away. That was my boundary. I walked away, and I was gone all day. I was expecting to have to do my laundry when I came back. I'm so thankful though that I had women in that place who cared about me. At that point, we had built a rapport. We knew each other. We were getting to know each other. And one of the women in there got back early, and she actually washed my bedding for me. And they picked flowers like roses and put them on my bed. It was actually really, really sweet. And they made a sign that was like, "We love you, Tara." It was so sweet. It was a situation that could have been really even worse than it already was had I chosen to engage and run my mouth. But thank God I had lived in the shelters for a year at this point, and I had learned to not engage with things like this at that point. I learned the hard way in my first year in the shelters to not engage. And so thank God I didn't engage. And the women that I lived with saw that and respected that. And they took care of the situation for me. I didn't have to deal with a stained, you know, stained bedding at the end of the day. So, anyways, that's my walk away story. I've got a lot of walk away stories, but that one came to mind. Artem, I never find myself having to enforce my boundaries. I love to talk to people that disagree with me. It can be tricky to tell if they also like it, though. Oh, interesting, Artem. I think I tend to read people. I'm very sensitive. I think I tend to read. I have trouble not reading people. Um, it's interesting that you really enjoy interacting with people when they disagree with you. I'm working on that. I would love to have that as a trait, and I think that is a amazing quality that you have. Your perspective, Artem, um, I really respect. I'm not trying to make a joke. Even though it might have come out like I was trying to make a joke, I really mean that. I really respect your perspective and find it really interesting. And you remind me because the conversation has been so rich in the Thursday night meetings. So, if I could have a moderator, if someone's available to post a link to the Discord, Rachel's server, that would be tremendously helpful to me because we have a Thursday night. I don't even know what to call it. Like I was calling it a recovery meeting for a while, but I don't think that that phrase is appropriate anymore. Although we do talk about recovery in there. So I would say it's technically still recovery, but it's not your traditional recovery meeting. So it's on Thursdays. We do it at 6 p.m. every week, and it's been really fun. So if you've been coming to that, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Thursday night at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time at the Discord that Tala and Drew just posted. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Everyone is welcome there. Zach says, we believe what we are convinced of. What things are you allowing to convince you? Are you asking me, Zach? Because I'm interpreting this as you're asking me. Um, hmm. I mean, that's a deep question. That's very loaded. I'm convinced that I'm going to get a place soon, a new place with a stronger internet signal. I think you're saying it in a different regard though, like allowing to convince you. Maybe I'm allowing myself to be convinced that mm, I don't know, Zach. This is a hard question because I thought of something positive. Like I'm convinced that I'm going to get a new place soon. I am. In the next 2 months. I'm gonna be in a new place. I think sooner. So did I tell y'all that I applied for a new place? I'm waiting to hear from the property management company if I got approved or not. But they have everything that they've asked me for. They're checking my references, which is a good sign. So that's all I can think of, Zach, um, when you say what things are you allowing to convince you. Like I think you're looking for something else, but all I can think of is that I'm going to be living in a new place soon. And I'm really excited about it. I'm trying to think of, on the flip side of that, what might be holding me back. Mm. This would be a good time to circle back to something that I don't remember if I said it in part one or if I said it in this stream. Because if you're just joining us, we lost signal in part one and we made it back here. I'm so glad that everybody, well, I'm glad that most people made it back. And something that I had mentioned earlier is that there's this concept in peer support that treatment follows conception. And I wanted to explain what that meant. And I apologize if anybody took a stab at it. I didn't see anything come through, but I could have missed it when we lost signal. So this is a perfect segue from Zach's comment, because treatment follows conception means that if we hold somebody with a negative regard, we have a judgment about them that they're never going to get better. For example, this person is never going to recover. Then our treatment of that person will change according to that perspective. Whereas if we hold somebody with unconditional positive regard, the chance that this person recovers increases because they receive what has been shown statistically to actually be effective with recovery, and that is unconditional love, unconditional positive regard. Now, to be clear, unconditional love is not boundaryless. Unconditional love with boundaries is the best place that I have found that I can be. So when I think about the phrase treatment follows conception, I have to remind myself, because I'm guilty of forgetting this. I'm guilty of forgetting that everybody can recover if they want to. And so treatment follows conception. Some of you may have heard this before, but there was study done at this cancer clinic. I forget the name of the gentleman who started telling patients, rather than telling them that their disease was terminal and that they wouldn't recover from it, he started telling them that there was hope and that they could get better, they could recover. And there was a significant increase, a statistically significant increase in cancer remission because of this concept of treatment follows conception. So I wanted to share that with y'all. I think that's a really interesting concept, and that it ties in not only to Zach's comment, what things are you allowing to convince you? If we hold somebody with a negative regard, or um, that a person is incorrect because they have a different perspective, that could affect the way that we interact with them, which could affect the way that they experience the world and view themselves. And so treatment follows conception. It's a peer support principle to hold people to a positive regard and to allow people the space to recover um, as they choose. Whether that be with meds or without, whether that be with a higher power or without, um, whether that be with, the choice to vote or not. Like, all of these things feed into a person's personal choice and freedom. And so, again, I appreciate y'all taking the time and making the space to allow me to share this stuff with you tonight. Thank you. Drew says, I live my life according to his word. I frankly don't like the word religious. It sounds fake. Right. I agree with you, Drew. I don't like the word religious either. I've been raised with many different religions. Although my parents are no longer religious, they tend to identify with a certain religion just as a way to communicate to people what they believe. But in practice, their beliefs are different than any religion. And I would go as far as to say that my beliefs are also different than any religion. And very difficult for me to communicate, by the way. Like I can't really express quite what I believe, but I can all at the same time. I can try. Kimmy agrees with Drew. Yeah, me too. Artem, Zach, LOL. I consider uncertainty as the number one most important thing in life. I'm not entirely convinced of most anything. My opinions are theoretical to me. And you know what, Artem? That is one thing that I really admire about you is that you're so open to other people's perspectives. It's like I aspire to be that open um and willing, like I think I am, but I feel like you've taken it to the next level. Like you are um, really able to engage with people in a way that's non-accusatory and accepting while also expressing your perspective. And I just think that's so great. Morrison, I don't identify with a religion. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I figured that you would say that, Morrison, and I was really curious about whether you identified with a religion or not. But yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. That is what I thought you would say. Nasir, I believe in my higher self. Interesting, Nasir. Nasir, slow mo, no problem, bro. So Nasir, I can relate to what you're saying here. I feel like there's different versions of myself. I've never thought of it in that way before. Like I've always called um, like God. I'll use the word God here because everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like I've used the word higher power for God before, and I feel comfortable with that, but it some people aren't comfortable with that, so sometimes I just say God. I heard Morrison say I am at one point. That's like a better word for God. uh, that can confuse people. I used that with someone and they looked at me sideways and it was hard for me to explain it. If you're just coming in, welcome. We are having a healthy conversation about boundaries and community guidelines this evening. And I asked a question about if people identify with religion. Totally fair conversation to have. It's totally within the limits as long as we can be respectful of one another's opinions. And so I'm reading the comments right now about what people think about that. Matt Torrance in the house. Hey, Maddie, nice to see you, friend. I'm so glad that you made it. Zach says, I like that. Proudly ignorant. Yeah, Artem, I love your thoughts. I really appreciate when you share them. Drew, this girl sounds like she was jealous and didn't want you to have anyone else. I don't know what happened with her. Cheryl, we were talking about Cheryl. Uh, Perhaps there's no way for me to know. Like, this woman was um, a veteran, and I'm sure that she's experienced a lot in her life to get her to the point where she would do something like that. She was not mentally well. And so, like, I forgive her. I don't hold any negative emotion about it, but at the time, it made my blood boil. I could not believe that she did that. You did the right thing. Thanks, Drew. Yeah, so if you're just joining, welcome in. I had told a story about a time that I had to walk away from someone that did something incredibly inappropriate to me at a shelter that I was living at. And I appreciate that, Drew, that you said I did the right thing. I believe it was the right thing in that situation because, again, the support of the other women in that shelter, that they washed my sheets, they brought me roses, they made this sign for me. Like, it was just, I couldn't have even imagined that that's what I would have walked into. Um, and one of the women shared that with me, that they really respected the way that I handled that situation. That made me feel really good. Sometimes walking away is the best thing to do. Artem, the Discord server is awesome. I highly recommend it. It is the great tomato. Artem, you make me laugh. It is the great tomato. We were trying to figure out what to call the meeting because it's not your typical recovery meeting. It's turned into this thing of its own. And we were like, what are we going to call this? And I said, call it a tomato. I don't know. I had said that in my live stream. I don't think a tomato is necessarily the best thing, but maybe it is the great tomato meeting. I don't know. But Artem, thanks for remembering that. Zach, rhetorical. What was rhetorical? Oh, I think I missed a comment. So Zach says that's why people grow up being convinced of different religions around the world. Any belief to the contrary induces cognitive dissonance. Uh, Rhetorical. Yeah, it's hard when you have parents that have a certain belief. It's hard to have differing beliefs because, like, you get in trouble if you don't believe what they believe. Um, I think that's why it induces cognitive dissonance because we're so conditioned growing up to believe what our parents believe. We can't we can't see it any other way. And it's very difficult to express that we have different beliefs if we do. Now, not all households are like this. I'd be willing to bet there are plenty of parents who give their children the freedom to believe as they want, and then I've heard certain households, they wait, they let their children um, explore, and then when they're 18, or just adults, like 16 or something, adultish, then they're given the ability to choose on their own. And I like that perspective. Share the knowledge, but don't require that they adhere to any particular perspective. And then when they're old enough to decide, let them decide and love them unconditionally. I don't have children though, so who am I to say something like that? For those of you who have children, I'd be interested in what you have to say about what I just said. I see that Maddie's comment got blocked. Me and Tara are moving into a new place. It'll be a love nest. I think that's a sweet comment, Matt. I think someone thought that you were trolling. It's going to be my own personal self-love nest. And there will be boundaries around that place. Zach, I think people generally can't help but feel convinced of their religion. I don't hold it against them. I think it's entirely okay to be strongly convicted about things, perhaps even admirable. Absolutely, Artem. I agree with you 110%. I think it's wonderful when people have a strong conviction about their own spiritual beliefs, and there is something admirable about that. In terms of peer support and the topic of this live stream, I encourage that conviction. I encourage everyone here to share their spiritual beliefs. And also, I encourage everyone to accept other people for their own spiritual beliefs if they differ from yours, from ours, because it's something that not only do I think is morally correct, but it's something that I'm required to do to keep my peer support certification. I'm required to uphold the code of ethics. And so I think it's wonderful that you're all here with me, that we all can have this conversation and interact with each other with a level of unconditional positive regard. It's just wonderful. And again, I thank you all. Mo, does unconditional love involve telling the truth and holding people accountable for their actions? I think, I think it depends. I think unconditional love with boundaries is the ultimate goal, because you can't have, I personally, this is my perspective. I personally think that you can't have true love without boundaries. I've tried it before and it doesn't work for me. Before I learned about boundaries and what all this, walking away and stuff like that, or saying to somebody, I'm fired up right now. I need some time to cool off. Can we come back to this in 20 minutes or tomorrow? I think that in terms of holding people accountable for their actions, it's an important thing to do. Also, to do it with love. The person who exploited me for labor, I held him accountable, and he's now making payments to me. I've got 2 more months of payments coming to me. I wasn't mean to him, though. That's not how I got him to pay me. I got him to pay me because I was ready to sue him and had all my paperwork ready to go. I had everything tied up with a pretty bow ready. And I think he knew that I meant business, because he asked me to send a summary of what I had done for him and what he had already paid and what he owed me. And so I sent him everything with a pretty bow on it. And it was with love. It wasn't, I wasn't overly nice about it. I was very much about business, but I didn't call him names. I didn't throw him under the bus and post all over social media what he had done, or slander him, or even try to make him feel bad about what he did. I didn't do any of that. And we came to an agreement that he would pay me. So I'm receiving payments. So I would say that's a good example of a successful holding someone accountable. And I think that's an appropriate thing to do. I think that holding someone accountable can be done in a conditional way where it's like authoritarian and like my way or the highway, which is not shown to be helpful in recovery. So uh, it's there. It's a I think it's a hard thing to talk about when we say telling the truth and holding people accountable for their actions. Um, I think that yes, unconditional love does involve telling the truth and holding people accountable for their actions. I also think that it's important to realize that not everybody is in the same place as we are, and like for example, I've lived at homeless shelters for 2 years and learned the hard way to walk away and that I don't always have to have the last word in a situation. And sometimes it's better for me just to not talk at all. Um, and that to me, it doesn't involve telling the truth and it doesn't involve holding someone accountable. I didn't tell actually, I did. I was gonna say I didn't tell management what happened, but no, I actually did, and they moved me to a different bed away from her. So that was my way of holding her accountable. There's nothing that I could have said to her to resolve that issue. I had to go to management and tell them what happened to protect myself. Um, and so actually I did do those things. I told the truth and I held her accountable, just not with her directly because she's not mentally stable to be able to do that with. So I think I understand the motive of your question, Morrison, and I appreciate where it's coming from. And I hear the point that you are making here. I just think it's important, and I agree with you. I do agree with you. I think that unconditional love does involve telling the truth and holding people accountable in different ways at different times. And in terms of different perspectives, I think it's important, like I said, in terms of the peer support code of conduct and the YouTube policies and community guidelines, that it's of utmost importance to recognize that other people have the right to have different perspectives and opinions than we do. And so your truth might very well be different from my truth, for example. I don't think that our truths are necessarily too far off, but I think they are different. And my truth might be different from Artem's truth, for example. Sorry to throw you under the bus, Artem. But we can all agree to disagree and we can all coexist with one another, um, and have a unconditional positive regard for each other, um, and agree to disagree. Kimmy, I personally think conviction is important. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think this goes back to what Morrison was saying about unconditional love. I lost my spot. Yeah, I think these two comments are connected to one another. I agree. I think conviction is important. So Kimmy then goes on to say, in my opinion, Morrison, yes, when you love someone, you fight for them. You don't sit back idly and support bad behavior or choices that could potentially harm them. My opinion, of course. I agree, Kimmy, and I have been guilty of sitting back and letting people do what it is they want to do, and it's never actually worked out well for me. So while I think sometimes walking away is the best choice, sometimes saying something is actually the best choice. Mo, do you believe in an absolute truth? I understand allowing people to live in free will, but I'm curious about your perspective. I'm going to read this again. I'm going to have a drink of tea also. Cheers. I love your questions, by the way. I love all of your questions. Do you believe in absolute truth? Really good question. I do believe in absolute truth. I think that everybody's absolute truth is and can be different at different times. So, for example, my parents' absolute truth 10 years ago, well, let's go further back. Let's say 20 years ago. My parents' absolute truth 20 years ago is FUBAR. It's completely unrecognizable compared to the way that they believe today. And my perspective of absolute truth has also changed as a function of watching them go through their shifts and also forming my own opinions about things. So, what is absolute truth to one person, I think doesn't necessarily apply to another person. And we change along our journeys. Like, I maybe this isn't true for you. Maybe your perspective is not going to change at all. But like we had a conversation about the bitumen, right? And in terms of absolute truth, before the bitumen conversation, you might have thought that shale or bedrock was just shale or bedrock. But now that we've had the conversation about bitumen, it has shifted perspective. And it's not that you were incorrect before, like the absolute truth about bedrock just being bedrock, which I have a pair of bedrock sandals, by the way, and I love them. Just a side note, they're my favorite sandals I've ever owned. Um, I like Chacos too, though. That's a hard one. Bedrocks versus Chacos. Anyways, I digress. My point is that because you have taken the time to study and develop opinions about shale and bedrock, your absolute truth has been updated. It's been upgraded as a function of the studying that you did. So, do I believe in absolute truth? Absolutely. Do I believe that absolute truth is the same for everyone? Yes. Do I believe that everybody is on a different part of that journey? Absolutely. And where I am today is not where I'm going to be in 5 years. It's not where I was 20 years ago. I hope that answers your question. Drew, I think being honest is true love, slow mo. Aw, that's so sweet. Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. It's just can the honesty be delivered in a loving way and can it be received with love is the question. Heather in the house. Hey Heather, you just came in on a very deep and profound conversation. We're in part two. We got cut off before. I think the weather cut us off before, but we seem to be hanging in there with the stream this time. So thank God for that. I think the hard connection is helping us out tonight. Yeah, most of the time, Drew says. Are you talking about like white lies or not white lies necessarily? Because I think a white lie is still a lie. But what do y'all think about that? Oh, I'm curious about that. The ethics of white lies. Whew. Tell me if you think white lies are ethical. There's so many different opinions on this. Or moral, like both. Are they ethically acceptable? Are white lies morally acceptable? Welcome back, Heather, says Mo. I agree, Kimmy and Drew. Yes. Heather, thanks, Slow and Drew. Glad to be back. Been stuck in the house. Yeah, the weather's been pretty gnarly, and I think I saw it's supposed to get even more wild tonight. Zach says yes, I agree. Proudly ignorant, aka Artem. I was just going back and reading Artem's comment that Zach was agreeing with. So to recap, Artem said, Zach, I think people generally can't help but feel convinced of their religion. I don't hold it against them. I think it's entirely okay to be strongly convicted about things, perhaps even admirable. Nasir says, divine power, same. I love that, Nasir, divine power. Yeah, I got clean and sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, so I was taught to refer to it as my higher power, but I like divine power just the same. Yeah. Straight Talker in the house. Hey, Straight Talker, nice to see you. You walked into a pretty deep conversation here. So it started with boundaries and community guidelines, which I'm going to recap here in a little bit. Now we've been talking about spirituality and fundamental truth, absolute truth, and people's perspective on what respect is, and all kinds of fun things that I'm so happy that we talked about tonight. Artem, Mo, I believe we can tell that we exist, that logic exists, and that we are able to measure things for sure. But the knowledge that we have definitive confirmation is extremely limited. That goes deep, Artem. Oh, but the knowledge that we have definitive confirmation of is extremely limited. Good point. Artem, Tara, did you ever get any idea about why she did it? Oh, good old Cheryl. Cheryl, um, as I sit here and try to not let my blood boil. No, I really do forgive her. I really do. I sometimes forgiveness is an ongoing process, right? Um, at the end of the day, Artem, and anybody who's interested in the answer to this question, I think Cheryl was incredibly mentally unstable and needed help. I think, I forget who said it. I think it was Drew who said, do you think she was jealous? Perhaps. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I don't know. The best answer I have is that she was just mentally unstable. Very sad. She, it wasn't just me though. She snapped at the other women and would do inappropriate things. Um, oh my goodness. I feel like I can't even tell you the things that she would do with, like, to the men. Like she would flash the men. It's like I have to say it because I can't leave y'all hanging like that. She would flash the men with, like, shirt up. She was not mentally well. We'll just say that. I don't mean to laugh at her. I'm not. It just sometimes I feel like they could make a TV show. I'm serious, just called The Shelter and have it be shelter life. Heather, I believe in nature and one universal spirit that is interpreted in different ways around the world. Heather, coming in with a different perspective. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Heather. I'm going to read that again. Heather said, I believe in nature and one universal spirit that is interpreted in different ways around the world. Beautiful, Heather. Beautiful. I'm so happy that you felt comfortable and safe to share that with us, Heather. I really appreciate that you did that. Straight talker. Hey, Drew. Morrison says, Artem, have you ever delved into learning about the logos? Well, I know you were asking Artem this question, but I have to say, I have never delved into learning about the logos. I read that as logos, like maybe I should make a logo, but I'm positive that is not what you're talking about, like a graphic logo. Positive that's not what you're talking about. Montessori method, says Straight Talker. Is that with respect to the logos? Drew says, yeah, that was me. Yeah, sorry, Zach. Maddie, Tara, I was not trolling. You are my number one lady. I know you weren't trolling, Maddie. I know you weren't trolling, man. But my moderators are looking out for me, So I, I appreciate your support, Matt. Morrison, the logos. Oh, good. Morrison's going to explain this. Thank you, Morrison. Okay, I'm excited. So Morrison says the logos is a name or title of Jesus Christ, seen as the preeminent expression in fullness of all the attributes, the complete thought, and the entire knowable reality of the infinite and spiritual. Wow, I've never heard this before. This is the name or title of Jesus Christ, seen as the preeminent expression in fullness of all the attributes. This is deep. The complete thought and the entire knowable reality of the infinite and spiritual, transcendent Godhead. Drew's apologizing to Matt. Mo, your comment is very deep and very loaded. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to snapshot it because I can't write all that down. But I am going to make a note about the logos because I just have never heard that before. Logos, see photo. Thanks for that, Morrison. I appreciate you sharing that. Rachel in the house. Hey, Rachel, nice to see you. Sorry we got cut off earlier, Rach. That was unfortunate. It's raining cats and dogs, and I forgot to switch over my signal. So during our boundary and community guidelines discussion, we dropped signal and some people found their way here and we lost some. So I'm so glad that you found us. Matt, does everyone here know that most of the Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray was shot in Illinois and not Pennsylvania? I did not know that, Maddie. Drew, I love that movie. My birthday is Groundhog's Day. That's so sad. Your birthday is Groundhog's Day, Drew? Wait, is it the same day every year? I thought it... Okay, I guess it is the same day every year since it's your birthday. Morrison, I did, Matt. That's one of my favorite movies. Did they catch who did it? Artem, Mo, nope, I don't think I have delved into that. Want to chat about it? I'm thinking to maybe talk about it in the non-live comments after the stream. Good proposal, Artem. Can I join? I want to see. Matt, what did this girl actually do to Tara? I missed that part. Okay, Maddie. So I will recap for the people who missed it and are just joining in. I lived at shelters for a couple years. Some of you know this already. When I had just moved into the second shelter, I think I'd been there about 6 weeks at this point. A female in her late 60s ish, I would say, veteran, um, not mentally stable. I befriended her, and I noticed that other women. She didn't talk to other women. She was just in her own little corner, um, kind of snappy with some of the other women. Nobody else really wanted to interact with her, and I should have been clued in at this point. I'll make this snappy because I know some of you have already heard this story. But long story short, and if you want to hear the full story, feel free to watch the replay. But long story short, this woman ended up throwing a full glass of orange juice all over my bedding and soaking my bed sheets right before I had to leave. They required that we leave at 8 o'clock in the morning every morning. And I was on my way out. I had 15 minutes left. I had to get to an 8 o'clock meeting. It didn't have time to clean it up. So that's what happened. It turned out okay. Like the other girls actually did something really nice for me, took care of my bed sheets. They were clean for me by the time I got back. And she didn't really mess with me after that. This is something I didn't actually say in the first round, is that after those other women took care of me and made that sign for me, Tara, we love you, put roses on my bed with clean sheets, she didn't really mess with me after that because I think she saw that I was part of the group, and that I wasn't to be messed with. And plus, I had walked away from her. And then, so yeah, without retelling the story about what happened after that, that's what happened. A woman, unstable, mentally unstable woman at one of the shelters I lived at, threw orange juice all over my bed one day. Morrison, sounds good, Artem. If you're on Discord, I would love to have a conversation, long form, bro. Morrison, yes, Artem is on. Maybe I don't want to speak for Artem. We'll see. Okay, Artem says, Mo, I could chat with you on Discord, but not tonight. Man, I want to hear that chat tonight, but I understand that you can't do it tonight. Drew spilled OJ on her bed and made it look like accidental. Yeah, she tried, but she was a very bad actress. Yeah, he's serious, Maddie. He's 100% serious. Rachel, I'm behind, but I'm one of those parents who is trying to teach my kids about different religions and also my beliefs at the same time, so that way they can decide what they believe when they are older. Rach, thanks for sharing that, because I was really curious about what some of the parents do. And I love that you want to empower them to make their own decision. That is so adult of you. If somebody spilled orange juice on your bed intentionally, you got to whoop that ass, Maddie. So I ended up walking away. I really, really wanted to get into it. And I think I said something like, "Are you serious?" I think is what literally came out of my mouth. But then I realized and remembered all of the learning I had done the past year at the safe house that I lived at, and recognized that engaging with this woman would have been the worst thing that I could have possibly done. So I'm pretty sure I have goosebumps just thinking about it, and like the emotion is back as if it's happening right now. And I'm pretty sure that I asked her if she was serious, and then I backed off and I walked away. I grabbed my bag and I walked away. I didn't even go to management at that point. I just grabbed my bag and walked away. So then later on, I told you how it went. Later on, I came back. The girls had taken care of everything, left me roses. I ended up communicating with management what happened, and they moved my bed away from her. Artemo, I could chat. Oh, I read that already. Drew, I know people do hurtful things sometimes, and we just have to walk away to protect ourselves. Precisely. And I mean, it was also to protect other people because there were young people, like junior high aged women who were in there with us, and I got to set some kind of good example for them and create some kind of stability. Gonna have to catch the replay, says Rach. Maddie, my truth is that Tara is the most special lady in town. You're so thoughtful, Maddie. Thank you. Morrison, I can't tonight either. Artem, do you have the same name on Discord? I'll message you later and we can set something up. Man, I wish I could be a fly on the wall for that conversation. Can I join or do y'all want privacy? The absolute truth is that I love Tara, Maddie. Proudly ignorant. I'm draw off on Discord. I've joined Rachel's server. Nasir, love is the truth. Well, I love that. Nasir, that is so beautiful and also such a challenging thing, I think, to define because it's such a loaded topic. You know, we have such different perspectives of what love is. There's a whole song written about it, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. So, anyways, I agree with you, Nasir. I do think that love is truth. But then you get into what is love? And that is a loaded conversation, which might actually be the topic of the next stream. That was the idea of our time, I think, to make the topic of this stream, what is love? It might be the topic of the next stream. We can talk about what love is. I'm going to write that down. I had to get this community guidelines and boundaries discussion out there first. Morrison, is truth relative and ever changing, or is it grounded in something and never changes? Morrison coming in with all these really great questions this evening. Is truth relative and ever changing, or is it grounded in something and never changes? If you're asking me, I think that truth real truth, the real truth doesn't change. I think, though, relative to that absolute truth, that people are on different parts of the journey to that. And that doesn't make them, I personally don't think that it makes them wrong. They're just at a different part of their journey. That's what I think. I know that it can sound confusing that I think that there's an absolute truth, but that people who don't think that way are not incorrect. I know that that sounds like it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense, and I acknowledge that, but that's my perspective, is that people can be at ABC on the journey to the truth that might be after Z, and they're not incorrect because they're on the path to the truth. That's what I think. Rachel posted a link to the Discord. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, anybody is welcome to join this Discord. This is where the Thursday night meetings happen, and they have been fantastic meetings on Thursday night at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard. Feel free to join us. We will be meeting this week. Kimmy, wait, I'm confused. You believe in absolute truth, but everyone has their own absolute truth, which can change. Isn't that the opposite of absolute truth? Right, which is exactly what I was talking about. So I'm not saying that everybody has their own absolute truth. What I mean to say, I might have said something that sounded like that, but what I mean to say, this is why it's very difficult for me to communicate what I believe. I believe that there is an absolute truth, but that people can all be on a different part of heading toward that absolute truth, and they're not wrong. They're just all at different places. Mo's going to hit Artem up. Artem says, I think white lies are acceptable, but not advisable. White lies can spiral into living in a world of lies. I agree with that, Artem. Yeah, Kingdom Within says, good point, Kimmy. It is a good point, Kimmy. I try to do my best to explain it, and I know that it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Maybe now would be a good time to listen to like The Weather by 10,000 Maniacs. I've never heard that song, Maddie. I have to do baths. I'll see y'all in a bit if you're still here. Right on, Rachel. I hope that you're enjoying the baths with the babies. Morrison, have a great night. Rach, Schoolboy Kai in the house. Schoolboy Kai says, wow. I I wonder what that wow is in reference to. How far behind? Oh gosh, I'm like 15 minutes behind. I'm gonna get caught up here soon. I'm getting caught up. She needs some help. Yeah, exactly. I know. I think you're talking about the girl that I called Cheryl, which, by the way, is not her real name. But right, was it Cheryl Crow? I knew she was no good. No, it was not Cheryl Crow. It was. She definitely needs help. Yeah, I hope she's gotten help since I've been in that place. Morrison coming in with another question. What is good and what is evil to you? I like the way that you posed that question, Morrison. So to me, what is good and what is evil? Hmm. Hmm. I think, this is a hard question. I think we innately know what is good and what is not. And I don't even necessarily want to use that word evil because it's like, what's good and what's on the other end of that? Although I think there is evil, I think they're not necessarily two opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think that's important. I think good could be on the other spectrum of like, and it's like what's perceived as good could be on the other spectrum of what's perceived as not good or bad. But it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily view it as like good and evil, because there could be something that's like not good, that's quote unquote bad, that ends up being a blessing in disguise. that we might have thought was evil that ends up being good. Like, for example, all the time that I spent in shelters, like that was not necessarily a good thing. Although it got me out of a really dangerous situation, it was incredibly stressful and re traumatized me. And I'm like just now kind of moving past everything that I witnessed and saw and experienced and heard. And the whole shelter life. By the way, I don't recommend that anybody ever live at a shelter, especially children. Um, Even though I did it for 2 years. So, I think that experience, though, led me to where I'm at now. I learned a heck of a lot, from my time at shelters, including walking away from situations that could get out of control very fast. I think something good that came out of living at shelters was that now I'm moving into housing. I'm like getting ready to move into a different place. I mean, I've been in my own place for a year, but like that's something really good that came out of something that could be viewed as very bad. Or even some people would consider shelters to be evil. I mean, some of the stuff that goes on in these places could be considered evil. Um, for the sake of this conversation, though, it is very difficult for me to verbalize the way that I think about this, but I'm doing the best that I can here. I think that things that could be viewed as evil could also be viewed as blessings in disguise. Now, if we're talking about mass murderers, I'm not saying that there's like anything good about that. If we're talking, that's not good. It's like the opposite of good, right? And it could be viewed as evil. Or harming animals, that's not good. That I don't see anything good coming out of that. That could be viewed as evil. So I think evil's not necessarily the opposite of good. To sum up my answer to your question, I think that those things are independent because something that's not seen as good could be a blessing in disguise, whereas evil is like harming animals, killing people. Um, I don't even think I can say that on YouTube. Did I just violate the YouTube policies? Is that harmful or dangerous content? I apologize, YouTube. We're talking about opposing views here. And we're talking about good versus evil. These are opposing views. And so, for the purpose of this discussion, um, this content is appropriate. Thanks for your question, Morrison. Maddie, what is Cheryl Lee, who played Laura Palmer on Twin Peaks? I do not know the answer. Or was it Cheryl Lee who played Laura Palmer on Twin Peaks? It was not Cheryl Lee who played Laura Palmer on Twin Peaks, Maddie. Logos is too complicated. I do Legos. Oh, I didn't think about Legos. I was just thinking about the graphic logos. Mo's laughing at Matt. Nasir, cheers. 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 Okay, what's Morrison got to say? Morrison says, Proverbs 22:6, train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. That's an interesting proverb, Mo. Straight Talker says, good choice, Tara. She was looking for confrontation. She absolutely wanted me to smack her in the face, is what I think. Lord Kiss Freak in the house. Hey, Lord Kiss Freak. It's nice to see you around here. We have been talking about community guidelines and boundaries, and you probably made this comment 10 minutes ago. Yeah, you sure did. So or Yeah, we've been talking about community guidelines and boundaries. When I talk about wanting to this, so you missed, you missed. Well, you might have heard me talk about the story where I had to set a boundary with somebody that I lived with in a homeless shelter, and I chose to walk away rather than to engage with her. So when you heard me say that she wanted me to smack her in the face, that I didn't. That was on the heels of a story that I told about boundaries. If you heard that story, then I won't retell it. If you want to hear the story, I can briefly summarize it for you or just refer you to the replay. But I will briefly summarize it for you if you missed it, Lord Kiss Freak, because that would probably be a really weird thing to walk into to hear me say she wanted me to smack her in the face is what she wanted. Okay, Artem, Mo, I don't believe anything is truly evil in a supernatural sense. Let's talk in the non live comments. Then anyone can join and it doesn't have to be in real time, like on Discord. So interesting. I am so curious to hear about how this conversation goes because then how do you Okay, so if you're saying nothing is truly evil, it's like, okay, people do bad things, but people are inherently good, like that type of thing. I could hop on that train. Like mass murderers aren't all bad. There's good qualities about people who do bad things. I'm on that train too, Artem. Straight talker, it feels better in the long run to walk away. Sometimes the confrontation creates more of an unhealthy bond with the person. Yeah, it does. It has proven better for me to walk away from situations. When I don't do that, well, we'll just say when I do that, it always has served me well. It's never bit me in the butt that I've walked away from confrontation. Artem, Tara, yes, I'd love an entire stream about that. I totally have a definition in mind. Okay, we'll do that. That'll be the next stream. We'll see. I'm thinking next Monday would be the best time for that because Wednesday lately I've been riding on the heels of Kevin over at Kickin' Addictions live stream and having like comments about whatever it is that I got out of his meeting. So we'll do for next Monday, I will schedule the live and the topic will be what is love? I hope y'all can be there. I'd be interested to hear what y'all think about that. Morrison, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. Um, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. That looks familiar to me. I think that's from First Corinthians, isn't it? Nasir, wisdom of the day, Tara, truth, love. Whew, Nasir, I appreciate that comment. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you found it again. Everybody that made it over from part one, I'm so glad you found us. Artem, I think love means wanting something, someone, or something to be a part of your life for the rest of your life. Simple and very well defined. Mm, mm. I've never thought of it that way, Artem. I thought we were waiting to talk about love until next Monday, but now we're talking about it. So here's an appetizer for you folks. I'm gonna have to prepare for this though, like I prepare for these things. So it'll be interesting to see what I come up with. Like this is gonna be a good exercise for me because I've never actually thought about what I think about love. So I think I'm gonna enjoy this one. I enjoy all of them, but love does not delight in evil. Okay, he said first. Yeah, it is First Corinthians. Excellent. Okay, so love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. I'm gonna have to study that verse, I think, because I think it's gonna help mold Well, I don't need to actually, I can just jot First Corinthians down. Heather, Matt, yes, pardon my lag. It is a great song to listen to in the rain. Natalie Merchant is a genius. Great idea, Artem. Love is All Around. Ophelia is my favorite album. Love is All Around was the theme song of the Mary Tyler Moore show. Really? I didn't know that was the name of that song. Love is Free. Don't cry. The storm is over. Hey, Schoolboy Kai. It's nice to still see you here. Well said, Mo. Everyone smash that like button. Thank you so much for reminding me. I never remember. Well, I always forget. Words are becoming difficult for me all. Um, yes, Drew, thank you very much. Please smash the like button if you haven't done so already. It's free and it helps me help to build this community. It's extremely helpful. That's how people discover me. That's how Artem discovered me, is y'all smashed the like button. YouTube recommended me to him and now he's here. One of my, well, you're all my favorite, but like Artem, I truly value your presence here. I hope you know that. Maddie, love is free except in Bangkok where it's $10. Oh my goodness. Yes, geez. I can watch again later. Okay, right on, Kiss Freak. Thank you. I'm so glad that you stopped in tonight. Nasir, love and sex are different. I agree with that. Dr. Crispy in the house. Hey, Dr. Crispy, it's so nice to see you again. Dr. Crispy says, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Nice top. Nasir says, nice topic, Tara. Yeah, Dr. Crispy, I'm looking forward to next Monday. We're going to be talking about that exact thing. What is love? Some people have gotten this chat going already, but I'm going to do my best to define this crazy thing that we call love. So that'll be the topic of next Monday's um, live stream. I want to sum this one up as we land the plane here, because we've been going, gosh, including the part one of this, which got cut off due to technological issues. It's raining cats and dogs out, I think, and I forgot to connect to my hard connection. So the Wi-Fi went out during the storm, and here we are in part two. So thanks everyone who was in part one, who made it to part two. And just to recap, as we land the plane here, let me wet my whistle here before we land the plane. Nasir says the Tibetan monks meditate on love for years. And Tala coming in with Jesus Christ is King. So Tala, I really appreciate your perspective and I do not disagree with you. I just want to remind you and everyone of these community guidelines. So this is a perfect segue for the end of the show. As a peer support specialist, which I am, I have a certification to legally protect, and I am legally required to uphold the ethical code of conduct of peer support specialists. As such, this is got to be an inclusive environment where we accept and allow people of all different beliefs, all different religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, however you want to look at it, all different cultures, all different viewpoints on medication, all of these different perspectives, which can get heated. You know, these are very controversial topics. It's so important that we support each other and respect other people's perspectives. So I know we've got some people. I've got moderators here who are very spiritual in their beliefs, and I love that about them. And I've got some people who have differing beliefs, and I love that about them. I've got some people in here might not even believe in a higher power. We haven't heard anything about them at all. Nobody has been as bold or as brave to express an atheistic viewpoint, but it's important to me and required, that I be tolerant of everyone, regardless of beliefs. And if you're a moderator, I ask that you have the same respect for other people as I have, because it's a reflection of this channel, this platform, and I do have a certification to protect. So if you're just joining us, this is probably not the most fun of topics, but I've never actually done a community guidelines stream. I've never talked about them. I've never talked about boundaries on this channel. So that is what this entire live stream has been about. In terms of the YouTube policies that I found, I'll just briefly recap that YouTube does have policies around harmful or dangerous content, hate speech, harassment and cyberbullying, medical misinformation. And I wanted to just highlight the fact that not only do I have a peer support certification to protect, but we also want to play nice with respect to YouTube's policies so that we can keep our doors open and keep this safe space, to allow everybody to come and share what they're going through. So tonight we talked about boundaries. We talked about walking away when it's appropriate. Sometimes that can be a boundary. We talked about a lot of really good stuff tonight. And one last thing is, like, in terms of what is a boundary, something that I had mentioned in part one, that I thought was really pertinent. And so as we wind things down, I'll end with this. What is a boundary? A boundary is just what's okay and what's not. Simply put, what's okay and what's not okay. So in terms of peer support specialist, the certification that I have to protect, it's not okay for me to not be inclusive of other people's beliefs and their perspectives. It is okay to create an environment where everybody is unconditionally supported, regardless of what their beliefs are with respect to religion, spirituality, medication, or culture. Again, very hot topics. Everybody is welcome here, regardless of what you think about those things. So, with that being said, next Monday, we were going to be talking about love. It seems like people are excited and amped up to talk about that topic. So let's see what there's a few comments that, let's see. Yeah, Dr. Crispy, don't hurt me no more. Dr. Crispy, you're on the same wavelength that I am on, because I was singing that song as well. Nasir, the Tibetan monks meditate on love for years. I did not know that they meditate on love, Nasir. That is interesting. The Tibetan monks. I'm writing that down also. Drew, love is paying the price for someone else. Thank you, Jesus. Artem, this was great. I'll have to rewatch. Thanks, Tara. Oh, Artem, thank you so much. Your presence is absolutely valuable here. I love having each and every one of you in here. Artem, you have added so much to this conversation this evening, as have you all. Drew, Tala, Morrison, Kimmy, Marky was in part one. Megan opened it up in the beginning of part one. She was the first commenter. Rachel, you were in here. I know you're doing bath time right now, but I really appreciate each and every one of you for volunteering to moderate for this channel. It really means a lot to me that every single one of you are here, not just my moderators, but everyone who showed up to part one, part two, combination of both, one or the other, it doesn't matter. I really appreciate you. So, Nasir says Tara is on point. I appreciate that, Nasir. I feel like we're just getting warmed up here. I'm just learning, like finding my YouTube feet here, working on creating content for you all, and I really enjoy it. You're welcome, Artem. Thank you. So that's the show for tonight. That's the stream for tonight, everybody. I want to tell you, thank you, Nasir. I appreciate that very much. I want to tell you all that it has been a pleasure, as always. Next week, we're going to be talking about love. So put your brainstorm caps on and get ready to talk about what you think love is, your perspective, and get ready to hear some other perspectives on what other people think love is. Thank you for listening to me talk about community guidelines and boundaries this evening. It was a pleasure, as always. I love you all very much, and I hope to talk to you soon. Oh, and one more thing. It sounds like Artem and Morrison might be having a chat in the comments after this. So I definitely don't want to interrupt that chat. I don't know if it's still going to be going on, but I'm going to hang around in the comments for a little while. So with that, I love you all very much, and I hope to talk to you soon.